There are cases where police arrive too late, and then there are cases where they arrive on time but still miss everything. This is one of those stories, because when officers walked into that apartment, they thought they were investigating a crime. They didn't realize they were sitting across from a man who was dying, and instead of saving him, they questioned him for hours. This is the story of Ryan Waller. It started with a call, not a scream, not a struggle, just silence that had gone on too long. Inside a quiet apartment complex in Arizona, neighbors had begun to feel it, that uneasy shift in atmosphere, no movement, no voices, no signs of life. Something wasn't right. And eventually, someone called the police. When officers arrived, nothing looked unusual from the outside. No broken windows, no forced entry, no chaos. Just another apartment door, sitting quietly in the heat. But silence can be louder than noise, and this silence was heavy. They knocked. No answer. They knocked again. Still nothing. So they made the decision to go in. The moment they stepped inside, everything changed. The air felt wrong, still, thick, unnatural. And then they saw her on the floor, unmoving, lifeless. She had been shot. The room told a story of violence, but not chaos. There was no sign of a struggle, no overturned furniture, no frantic escape, just stillness. And in that stillness, someone else was there, sitting, alive, but not right. Ryan Waller was there in the apartment, breathing, conscious, looking at the officers, but something about him didn't make sense. His eyes weren't focusing properly. His speech was slow, confused, delayed, like someone trying to wake up from a dream that wouldn't let go. From the officer's perspective, this was now a crime scene, a dead woman, a man sitting nearby. No signs of forced entry, no immediate suspect, and the only person alive in that room was Ryan. So they did what they were trained to do. They started asking questions. Ryan, what happened here? A simple question, but the answer didn't come easily. He hesitated. Not like someone hiding something, but like someone struggling to find reality. His words were slow, fragmented, confused. I don't know. He looked around the room, like he was seeing it for the first time. What the officers didn't realize, what no one realized in that moment, was that Ryan wasn't just confused, he was injured severely, a gunshot wound to the head. But it wasn't obvious, not at first glance. There was no dramatic collapse, no visible panic, just subtle signs that were easy to miss if you weren't looking for them. Minutes passed, then more, and instead of calling for immediate medical attention, they kept asking questions, trying to piece together a timeline, trying to understand what happened in that room. But the problem was, the only person who could tell them was losing his ability to do so. Ryan, did you do this? A direct question, heavy, accusing. He blinked, slowly, confused. No, His voice trailed off. Not defensive, not angry, just lost. From the outside, it looked suspicious, a man sitting next to a victim, unable to explain what happened. Delayed responses, unclear answers, lack of urgency. But what they saw as suspicious behavior was actually something else. Something far more serious. Ryan wasn't being evasive. He wasn't hiding anything. His brain was shutting down, slowly, quietly. While he sat there trying to answer questions he couldn't fully understand. Time moved forward, but for Ryan, everything was slipping backward. His speech got worse. His awareness faded. His responses became more fragmented. And still, no one realized what was happening. At some point, something shifted. A moment where confusion turned into concern, where the signs became too obvious to ignore. But by then, so much time had already passed. Time that mattered. Time that could have changed everything. Because what they would soon discover would change the entire narrative. Ryan wasn't just a witness. He wasn't just a suspect. He was a victim. And the truth? It had been sitting right in front of them the entire time, unseen, unrecognized, until it was almost too late. The room hadn't changed. The body was still there. The silence still heavy, but Ryan was getting worse. Not dramatically, not in a way that demanded attention, just small things, subtle things, the kind that are easy to ignore until it's too late. Ryan, we need you to focus. Look at me. Tell me what happened. Their voices were firm now, less patient, more direct. Because from their perspective, this was a critical moment. They had a possible suspect, and his answers weren't making sense. But inside Ryan's head, nothing was clear. Thoughts didn't connect. Words didn't form properly, and reality itself felt unstable. Imagine trying to answer a question while your brain is slowly shutting down, while your vision blurs, while your memory fractures. That's where he was. And no one in that room understood it. There were signs, clear signs, but only if you knew what to look for. His eye wasn't normal. There was damage, swelling, subtle, but there. At times it looked like he wasn't even seeing them correctly. Like one side of his vision was gone. His speech, slurred, delayed, disconnected. Not the speech of someone lying, but of someone injured, severely. Ryan, you need to be honest with us. Something happened here. You were here. You need to explain this. The pressure increased. Not aggressive, but persistent. And with every question, Ryan seemed to drift further away. He tried. That's what makes this harder to watch. He tried to answer, tried to understand, tried to stay present in a moment his mind couldn't hold on to. I don't... His words fell apart. His thoughts didn't land. He looked around the room again, confused, lost, like he didn't fully recognize where he was anymore. To the officers, he was inconsistent. He couldn't explain himself. He wasn't reacting normally to reality. His brain was bleeding. His cognitive function was collapsing. His body was in crisis, but perception controls action. And in that moment, perception was wrong. Minutes turned into longer stretches of time, and still no ambulance, no urgent medical response. Just questions, more questions, and a man slowly slipping past the point of recovery. Then it happened. A pause, a closer look. Something about Ryan finally stood out. Maybe it was his eye. Maybe it was how unresponsive he was becoming. Maybe it was the way his body no longer matched the situation. But something clicked. Something broke through the assumption. This wasn't just confusion. This wasn't just shock. This wasn't just suspicious behavior. This was medical, serious, immediate. And suddenly everything changed. The tone shifted instantly from questioning to ikakwis to urgency, from suspicion to concern. An ambulance was finally called. But by then, so much time had already passed, time that mattered, time that Ryan didn't have. When medical professionals arrived, they didn't see a suspect. They saw a patient, and within moments, the truth began to surface. A gunshot wound to the head, the kind of injury that should have been treated immediately, the kind of injury where every second counts. And yet, he had been sitting there, talking, answering questions, while his condition worsened. Let that sink in. for hours. Ryan Waller had been conscious, responsive, trying to communicate with a bullet in his head. The human brain is unpredictable. Sometimes it holds on longer than it should. Sometimes it masks damage in ways that deceive everyone. And sometimes it gives just enough function to make a life-threatening injury look like something else, something less urgent, something misunderstood. Ryan wasn't just present in that room. He had lived through what happened. He had survived the initial attack. He had stayed alive long enough to be questioned about it. And the answers they were trying to get from him were trapped inside a mind that was breaking down. But the biggest question still remained. If Ryan didn't do this, then who did? Because somewhere out there was the person responsible, the one who pulled the trigger, the one who walked away while Ryan was left behind, alive, injured, and unheard. It wasn't supposed to be a dangerous night. No warning, no signs, no reason to believe that anything was about to go wrong. Inside the apartment, Ryan and his girlfriend were living a normal moment, the kind of moment no one ever thinks twice about. Quiet, routine, safe, or at least it felt that way. Then something broke that normalcy, a knock. Or maybe not even that. Maybe it was the sound of movement, a shift in the air, the kind of feeling you get when something isn't right. And before there was time to react, they were no longer alone. Two men, not familiar, not expected. They didn't belong there, and they didn't come to talk. This wasn't random. This wasn't confusion. They were there for a reason, and whatever that reason was, it turned violent, fast. There are moments in life where everything changes in seconds. This was one of them. Words may have been exchanged, or maybe not, because what came next didn't leave time for conversation. Gunfire, sudden, close, unforgiving. In that instant, Ryan's world shattered. A shot, direct, to his head. The kind of injury that should end everything, the kind of injury no one walks away from. But somehow, he didn't fall, not completely. Instead, something unexplainable happened. He stayed conscious, barely, but enough to exist in that moment, enough to witness pieces of what came next, even as his brain was already beginning to fail him. Across the room, his girlfriend. She didn't survive. Her injuries were immediate, final. And in that small apartment, the silence returned. But this time, it wasn't normal. It was the kind of silence that follows violence. Heavy, permanent. And just as quickly as it began, it was over. The intruders left. No panic, no rush, just gone. Leaving behind a lifeless body, a critically injured man, and a crime scene that would confuse everyone who walked into it. Time passed. We don't know exactly how much, minutes, hours, but during that time, Ryan was still alive, still breathing, still existing inside a body that had already been pushed beyond its limits. Imagine that. Trying to understand what just happened, while your brain is failing, trying to process reality, while slipping in and out of awareness, trying to survive, without even realizing how close you are to dying. That's where he was. By the time police arrived, Ryan's memory wasn't whole anymore. It was fragments, pieces, moments that didn't connect, which is why he couldn't tell them what happened, not because he didn't want to, but because he couldn't. The answers they were asking for were already gone, lost somewhere between trauma and time. Even if they had asked the right questions, even if they had known he was a victim, he may not have been able to give them what they needed. So investigators had to rebuild everything. without him, without a clear timeline, without a full account of what happened inside that room. They had to rely on evidence patterns, connections, and slowly, a picture began to form. This wasn't random. The apartment wasn't chosen by chance. The intruders weren't lost. They knew where they were going, which meant someone inside that apartment was the target. Was it Ryan? Was it his girlfriend? Or was it something connected to their lives? Something outside that apartment that followed them inside? Investigators began digging, looking into relationships, past conflicts, possible motives, trying to find anything that could explain why two armed men would enter that space and leave destruction behind. While all of this was unfolding, Ryan Waller was fighting for his life. Doctors now fully aware of what had been missed, working against time, against damage that had already spread, against a delay that should have never happened. Because in cases like this, time isn't just important, it's everything. Every minute matters, every second counts. And Ryan had lost hours. But even as doctors fought to save him, another question was closing in. Who were the men who did this? And more importantly, why? Because the answer to that question would reveal something far more disturbing than anyone expected. At first, everything pointed inward, inside the apartment, inside that room, at the only person still alive, Ryan. But once the truth came out, once it was clear he'd been shot too, the entire direction of the case changed. This wasn't an interrogation anymore. This was a manhunt. Without a clear witness, investigators had to reconstruct the night from fragments, physical evidence, ballistics, entry points, movement inside the apartment. Every detail mattered. Every small piece had to be connected. And slowly, a pattern started to emerge. There was something strange. No signs of forced entry, no broken locks, no damaged doors. Which meant one thing. The intruders didn't break in. They got in another way. Either the door was opened willingly, or the attackers found a way in without resistance, and both possibilities pointed to something more calculated, more deliberate. This wasn't a burglary gone wrong. Nothing was taken, nothing was searched, nothing suggested panic or chaos. Whoever came into that apartment came with a purpose. And once that purpose was fulfilled, they left. Investigators started digging deeper, looking into Ryan's life, his girlfriend's connections, anyone who might have had a reason to target them, because crimes like this don't happen in isolation. They come from somewhere, a conflict, a history, a decision made long before that night, and then a possibility surfaced, not confirmed, but strong enough to consider. This could have been personal, not random, not mistaken identity, but targeted. The way the crime unfolded told its own story, close range, direct, no hesitation. That kind of violence usually comes with intent, not fear, not panic, intent. Even as investigators worked to build the case, something was missing, a key piece, something that could connect everything clearly. And that missing piece was Ryan. Ryan Waller was still alive, but his condition was critical. Doctors were fighting to stabilize him, to reduce the damage, to give him a chance. But the delay had already taken its toll. In cases involving brain trauma, time is everything, and Ryan had lost it. Hours, precious hours, the kind of time that can mean the difference between recovery, permanent damage, or something worse. And now, doctors were working against that loss. If Ryan recovered, he could answer everything. He could identify the attackers explain what happened, give investigators the truth they needed. But that depended on one thing: whether his brain could recover enough to bring those memories back. And so everything paused. Investigators waited, doctors worked, and somewhere out there, the people responsible were still free, living normally, moving forward, while the consequences of what they had done were still unfolding. There were leads. There are always leads. Names that came up. Possibilities. People who might have known something. But nothing solid enough. Nothing that closed the case. Nothing that brought immediate justice. And that's where things became difficult. Because without clear testimony, without a confirmed suspect, the case couldn't move forward the way it needed to. It lingered, unresolved, incomplete. Sometimes, the most important witness is the one who can't speak. And in this case, that witness was still fighting just to survive. Because what happened next wasn't just about the crime anymore. It was about the aftermath, the consequences, and the question that would stay with everyone involved. What if things had been handled differently? Inside the hospital, everything became a race against time. Doctors now fully understood the severity. A gunshot wound to the head, swelling, damage that had been progressing, unchecked, for hours. They worked to relieve pressure on his brain, to stabilize him, to undo what they could. But medicine has limits, and time had already taken too much. This is the part that's hardest to accept, because it introduces a question that never really goes away. What if? What if he had been treated immediately? What if someone had recognized the signs earlier? What if those hours had been used differently? In cases like this, those questions don't have clear answers, but they don't disappear either. Ryan lived, but survival didn't mean recovery, not fully. The injury left lasting damage. The kind that changes everything: memory, vision, cognitive function, daily life. The same brain that once allowed him to think clearly now struggled to hold on to simple things. Ryan Waller would never return to the person he was before that night. Not because of the attack alone, but because of everything that followed it. Because survival came with a cost, a permanent one. And then there was the investigation, the questions that still needed answers. Who did this? Why? Where did they go? Despite efforts, the case never reached the kind of resolution people expect. No clear closure, no definitive justice that matched the weight of what happened. Just fragments, possibilities, and silence where answers should have been. But what truly stayed with people, what made this case different, wasn't just the crime. It was what happened after. The interrogation, the delay, the missed signs. How does someone with a gunshot wound to the head sit in front of officers for hours and not get immediate medical attention? It's a question that's been asked again and again. And every time, it leads back to the same answer: human error, misinterpretation, a moment where perception didn't match reality. This case became more than a story. It became a reminder that not all injuries are obvious, that not all victims look like victims, and that sometimes the difference between suspicion and understanding can change everything. After the headlines faded, after the discussion slowed, after the case moved out of public focus, what remained was quieter, but heavier. A life permanently changed, a crime without clear closure, and a series of decisions that couldn't be undone. At the center of it all was loss, a life taken, a life altered, and a moment in time that split everything into before and after. Because this story isn't just about what happened that night, it's about what happened after, the moments that followed, the decisions that were made, and the ones that weren't. Sometimes, the most tragic part of a story isn't the crime itself. It's what happens when the chance to change the outcome is right there and no one sees it.